Section 1. No one expected humans to be the ones to guard Deathworlder prisons, least of all the Deathworlders themselves. But the real question was, how did they get away with it, and why did they have no choice? The stark walls of the prison echoed with the footsteps of one of the few humans in the galaxy that had ever stepped foot inside a Deathworlder prison. Captain Elias Turner, a seasoned veteran and prison warden, stood at the control panel of the observation deck, his eyes scanning the immense structure below. The Deathworlder prison, known as Verni 7, was located on a planet so hostile to life that most sentient species had been driven to extinction. But the Deathworlders, a species known for their immense power and brutal instincts, had found a way to not only survive but thrive in the most hostile environment imaginable. This prison, this hellhole, was the last place anyone would think to send humans. And yet, here they were. Captain Turner shifted his stance, his boots clanging softly against the metal floor. The prison had been a joint venture between human and Deathworlder factions, created with the sole purpose of holding the galaxy's most dangerous beings. With a reputation for being unbreakable, the Deathworlder prisoners within these walls were some of the most violent criminals, including warlords, mercenaries, and insurrectionists. And yet, it was humans who were responsible for guarding them. No one had ever truly explained why. Turner had asked himself this very question many times, especially during his first days working here. But the answer was never simple, nor was it a matter of choosing what was easiest. There was something about Verni 7, about the Deathworlder prisoners themselves, that made humans uniquely qualified to manage this level of chaos. It wasn't a question of strength, intelligence, or even intimidation. It was something else. Something far deeper. Humans had always been the underdogs in the galaxy, but they'd learned how to outwit the most brutal creatures the universe had ever known. And Turner? He was about to face a challenge that would prove humanity's strength, and its vulnerability, like never before. Turner wasn't the only human on the station. There was a team of guards, mostly humans, assigned to manage the prisoners, a job that required more mental fortitude than raw physical strength. The Deathworlders, while capable of immense destruction, often found it difficult to understand human tactics. The humans, on the other hand, had learned to anticipate that, using their opponents' expectations to their advantage. But what had been a relatively smooth operation in the early years was now facing increasing strain. "Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Alex Ortiz over the comms, cutting through Turner's thoughts. "We've got a situation in Sector 5. One of the prisoners, Gorak, he's making a move." Turner's pulse quickened. Gorak was one of the most infamous Deathworlders in the prison, an alien warlord with a reputation for brutality. He had been captured years ago in a failed assassination attempt on a galactic monarch. Since then, he had been serving a life sentence in the prison, but no one truly believed he would remain docile for long. He had a certain charisma, a dark presence that made even the most seasoned officers uneasy. Turner had watched him in solitary confinement, studying his every movement, and it was always clear that Gorak had plans. "Send a team to intercept. Lock down all exits," Turner barked, already moving toward the control panels to override the facility's security system. "I'm on my way." The comms crackled again. "Understood, Captain. The situation is escalating quickly." But just as the humans were preparing for the inevitable conflict, something unexpected happened. The Deathworlder prisoners had always been unpredictable, but this time, they weren't just reacting to the pressure. They were testing something, someone, and that someone was Captain Elias Turner. As Turner made his way down the winding hallways of Verni 7, the high-pitched hum of the facility's systems filled the air. The station was a mix of advanced technology and the unforgiving brutality of the Deathworlder environment. The gravity was slightly higher than usual, making every step a little more laborious. The walls were reinforced with thick plating, but they still seemed to hum with the eerie energy of a place that held so much raw power. Turning a corner, he entered the security hub. A few other guards stood by, eyes scanning monitors for any signs of the chaos Gorak had triggered. Turner knew the reputation of Gorak's kind, but he had never been on the receiving end of such a direct challenge. He wasn't just a prisoner, Gorak was a symbol. He was the test of everything humans had worked for, proof that their fragile alliance with the Deathworlders could withstand the worst that could be thrown at it. Captain, Ortiz's voice came again, this time more urgent. We've got a breach in the upper levels. It's Gorak. He's made his move, he's taken control of the prison's control room. Turner's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't afford to let Gorak seize control. The prisoners knew that once they took the control room, they could initiate lockdowns, trigger mass releases, or worse, use the entire station as leverage. Seal the perimeter. He doesn't get control of this place, understood? Turner ordered, his voice cutting through the air. We need to act fast. Ortiz didn't hesitate. Yes, Captain. We're locking down all sectors now. Sending reinforcements your way. But Gorak's intentions were far more complex than simply seizing control. He wasn't just trying to escape, he was testing the very foundation of human authority within the Deathworlder prison. Turner's boots echoed as he sprinted toward the prison's core. The control room was located deep within the facility, protected by several layers of automated defenses and armed guards. But it was all too clear now, Gorak wasn't acting alone. He had been planning for this moment. Turner had always known Gorak was a calculated strategist, and he suspected that the warlord's manipulations went far beyond mere brute strength. The deeper he went into the facility, the more he realized that this was not just about controlling a single room. It was about undermining humanity's role in the prison system, turning every human against their purpose. By the time Turner reached the central hub, the monitors on the walls showed a sea of flashing red alerts. The facility's lights flickered as Gorak's control system manipulated the station's power grid. The prisoners' cells opened one by one, a calculated chaos that sent a ripple of fear through the human guards. Captain, it's too late. Ortiz's voice came again, strained. He's initiated lockdown protocols in the lower levels. We're trapped. We need a way out. Turner stood in the control room, staring at the wall of data, his mind working quickly. He was surrounded by 1,000 possibilities, but none of them seemed to guarantee success. Gorak was playing a dangerous game. He had forced the humans into a corner, and now it was time for them to react.
In that moment, Riley understood the true nature of the challenge. It wasn't just a matter of brute force, or even strategy, it was about control. And Riley had to prove that humanity had a way of controlling even the most savage and unpredictable of Deathworlders. Get the team together. Now, Turner said, his voice steady but intense. We'll have to reset the system manually. I'll head to the command center. The crew mobilized quickly, and Turner led the way through the winding hallways toward the station's core. There was no room for hesitation. If Gorak was trying to break the station's control structure, then the only way to regain control was to go directly to the source. Turner knew it would be risky, but it was the only option left. When they arrived at the central command area, Turner found Gorak standing in front of the main console, his massive frame blocking the view. The warlord was a sight to behold, his eyes glowing with a fierce hunger for power. He turned slowly as the humans approached, a mocking grin spreading across his face. Do you think you can stop me, human? Gorak rumbled, his voice like a low growl. You've always been the weak link in this system. Always relying on brute force, on violence. But you will learn, we are the ones who will decide who stays in control. Turner took a deep breath and locked eyes with the alien warlord. You may have strength, Gorak. But what you fail to understand is that it's never been about strength. It's about understanding. Riley Turner knew then, as he faced Gorak, that the real battle was not one of force, but of will. End of Section 1.
Section 2. The battle for control of the prison had begun, but this was only the beginning. Gorak was playing a much deeper game, and it was clear now. The Kthar warlord wasn't just trying to escape, he was testing humanity's resolve, forcing them into a corner where the only way out was to face their deepest fears. The hum of the prison's central control system faded as Turner, with his team in tow, approached the command center. Gorak stood before the massive console, his hands poised over the interface, manipulating it with ease. The warlord's eyes burned with malicious satisfaction as he watched the humans approach. Turner felt the heat of his stare but didn't flinch. Gorak was a formidable opponent, but Turner knew that brute force wasn't the answer. There was more to this confrontation than physical strength. This was about willpower, control, and strategy. The doors of the central chamber slammed shut behind them, and Turner and his team found themselves locked in a room with Gorak. The warlord's voice echoed in the stillness, his deep, menacing tone almost vibrating through the floor. "You've always believed you were the superior species, haven't you, human?" Gorak said, his grin widening. "But your control, your ability to lead, was nothing more than an illusion. I've waited for this moment for a long time, Captain. The humans will fall, and I will reign." Turner's breath remained steady as he faced the warlord. He had studied Gorak for months, watching his movements, analyzing his behavior. Turner understood one thing about Gorak: the warlord didn't just crave power, he craved control. Gorak thrived on dominating those around him, bending them to his will. But what Gorak didn't understand was that Turner wasn't like the other beings Gorak had faced. "We're not the ones who fall, Gorak," Turner replied calmly. "We're the ones who rise." The tension in the room was thick, and Gorak could sense it. He wasn't just facing any opponent. He was facing someone who understood the most dangerous kind of power, the ability to outwit and manipulate the very systems that held him captive. Gorak growled, stepping toward Turner, his massive frame towering over the human. But Turner didn't move. Instead, he stood his ground, watching the warlord carefully. Gorak's strength and ferocity were well known, but Turner knew that fighting brute force with brute force was a losing strategy. Instead, Turner would rely on what had always given humanity an edge: ingenuity. The warlord's eyes narrowed as he raised a massive claw, seemingly ready to strike, but just as quickly, his hand dropped. There was something unsettling about Turner's calm demeanor. It was like the human was already 10 steps ahead. Gorak's arrogance betrayed his uncertainty, but he wasn't about to let that show. "You think you can win this battle with nothing but words?" Gorak's voice dripped with contempt. "You're in my domain now. The power has shifted, and you are nothing more than a weakling, clinging to whatever scraps of control you have left." "Power isn't just about physical strength," Turner said, his voice cutting through the warlord's tirade. "It's about knowing when to fight and when to let the system do the work for you." With a slight gesture, Turner activated the secondary systems in the control room, causing the flickering monitors to spring to life. A holographic interface appeared before him, displaying several lines of coded commands. Gorak was distracted for a brief moment, looking between Turner and the systems in disbelief. The warlord didn't realize it, but Turner had already begun to turn his own plan against him. The virus had already infiltrated the Xal fleet, and now, Turner was using that same code to manipulate the prison systems, undermining Gorak's attempts to seize control. But Gorak was quick to realize that his hold on the station was slipping. The Xal warlord was not accustomed to losing control, and in his frustration, he did the only thing he knew: he escalated. "What are you doing?" Gorak roared, his voice echoing through the chamber as the lights flickered and the systems began to glitch. "You're playing a dangerous game, human. Do you think you can beat me at this?" Turner's gaze never left the warlord. "I'm not playing," he said quietly. "I'm resetting the game." The holographic interface around Turner's hands pulsed with activity as he initiated a series of commands. Within seconds, alarms blared throughout the prison. The automated systems began shutting down, one by one. The security grid, the energy fields that kept the prisoners in check, all started to flicker and fail. Turner had tapped into the prison's core functions, creating chaos within the system. Gorak's face twisted in rage as he slammed his fist against the console, trying to regain control. But it was too late. Turner had already planted the seed of rebellion, disrupting the very core of the system that had kept Gorak in check. "You've made a mistake," Turner said, his voice firm. "You may have thought you could control us, but we've always known how to break free." The lights in the room dimmed as the facility's systems continued to destabilize. The prison, designed to hold the galaxy's most dangerous beings, was suddenly no longer a safe haven for the Xal warlord. And that was the key. Gorak relied on the prison's infrastructure, but without it, the warlord's power was reduced to nothing more than brute strength, no different from the prisoners he had kept under his rule. As the system began to collapse around them, Turner knew that the real battle had just begun. Gorak may have had strength, but Turner had something far more dangerous, the ability to turn the very environment against his enemies. "You think this is over?" Gorak's voice was a low, guttural growl, filled with venom. "I'll crush you. I'll make you pay for this humiliation." But Turner remained unshaken. "You'll try, but it won't work. Not this time." As Gorak lunged toward him, Turner's hand shot up, activating a sequence that triggered a defensive mechanism. The room flooded with a blinding light as energy barriers materialized between Turner and the warlord. Gorak recoiled, but before he could recover, Turner took a step forward, confident and calm. "You wanted to test our resolve, Gorak. Well, here it is. This is how humans fight." For the first time in the long confrontation, Gorak paused, sensing something he hadn't anticipated: humility. Humans might not have the power or strength of Deathworlders, but they had something that could outmatch even the most powerful alien: their ability to think, to strategize, and to adapt. And in that moment, it was clear, Riley Turner had outsmarted Gorak, turning his very pride against him. Gorak wasn't done yet. But Turner had shown him something the warlord had never seen before: humanity's ability to rise from the brink of destruction. And in that moment, the warlord realized that the fight for control had only just begun. The system flickered back to life as Turner initiated the final commands to lock down the prison once more. The energy fields reactivated, and the automated defenses came online. Gorak, his fury still burning, stepped back, realizing the extent of his defeat. But the damage had already been done. Turner had proven that humanity had more to offer than just survival. They had control, and they were willing to fight for it. As the prison systems regained stability, Riley Turner looked over at the warlord, who now stood silently, defeated but not broken. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Gorak's eyes burned with hatred, but there was something else there, too: a grudging respect for the human who had bested him. "Is this how it ends?" Gorak finally asked, his voice a low rumble. Turner didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to the guards in the control systems, locking everything back into place. "This isn't the end, Gorak," Turner said, his voice calm but resolute. "But it's a start. A new beginning. For you, for me, and for everyone else." End of Section 2. Section 3. The Xal warlord, Gorak, was far from defeated. In fact, the battle had just begun. Turner had played his cards well, but now the true test of humanity's resilience was at hand, one that would push them to their limits and beyond. The Verni 7 prison, once a symbol of human ingenuity and dominance, now felt more like a ticking time bomb. The lights flickered on and off, the central control systems had been hacked, and the hum of the prison's automated defenses seemed off-kilter. Turner stood at the helm, watching the flashing screens around him, his mind working in overdrive. Gorak had failed to take control, but that didn't mean he was out of the fight. In fact, it was clear that the warlord had been playing a much deeper game. Turner's quick thinking had disrupted Gorak's plans, but he knew better than anyone that the real challenge was yet to come. "Captain, we've got another problem," Lieutenant Harris said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "Gorak's reinforcements are on their way. We've got incoming ships, and they're armed to the teeth." Turner's jaw clenched. The situation had gone from bad to worse. It wasn't just Gorak now. The warlord's supporters, those who had been scattered throughout the galaxy, were coming for him, and they were bringing their full might. "We need to act fast," Turner said, turning to face his team. "Prepare for a lockdown, but we can't rely on the prison's defenses alone. Gorak has access to too many systems now. We'll have to fight back with everything we've got." "Reinforcements are en route," Harris confirmed. "But it's going to be tight. We've got about 15 minutes before those ships arrive." Turner had never been one to give in to fear, but this was different. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, the knowledge that the next few minutes could determine the future of not only the prison but the entire galaxy. The Xal warlords weren't just invaders, they were a force of nature. "Status report," Turner barked, walking quickly toward the data consoles. The team had been scrambling to assess the incoming threat, but time was running out. "We've got 4 ships inbound, heavily armed, with advanced Xal technology," Ortiz, the communications officer, said, her fingers moving quickly across the console. "They're sending encrypted signals. It looks like they're trying to coordinate with Gorak." "What's our current status on the facility?" Turner asked, his mind racing. "Are we still in control?" "Partial control," Ortiz replied, her voice strained. "We've locked down most of the sectors, but the prison's central hub is still compromised. The backup systems we've initiated are holding, but not for long." Turner frowned. They didn't have much time. The Xal were known for their technological superiority, and if they managed to breach the prison's defenses, it would be over. The warlord supporters were not just here for vengeance, they were here to take control, to ensure that Gorak's vision of a galaxy dominated by Deathworlders would come to fruition. "We need to buy more time," Turner said, his voice low but determined. "Can we disable their comms? Cut them off from Gorak's command?" Ortiz hesitated. "It's possible, but it would require a manual override. We'd need to go directly to the relay station in Sector 4. But with the Xal closing in." "Do it," Turner interrupted. "I'll head to Sector 4 myself." Time was the most precious commodity now, and Turner knew that if they didn't act fast, the Xal would overwhelm them. But he wasn't about to give up, not now, not when humanity's future was on the line. The prison's corridors felt colder than usual as Turner made his way toward Sector 4. He had fought in countless battles, faced down enemies with overwhelming odds, but this was different. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for control of the very future of humanity. If Gorak's supporters managed to breach the prison's systems, it would send a message to every Deathworlder in the galaxy: humanity was weak, vulnerable, and ripe for conquest. He tightened his grip on the weapon at his side. It wasn't much, a standard-issue sidearm, nothing extraordinary. But at this point, it was all he had. The corridors were eerily silent, the only sound the faint hum of the station's failing systems. As Turner rounded the corner, he spotted a group of guards, fellow humans, moving cautiously down the hallway. Their faces were filled with tension, their eyes alert. "Captain," one of the guards, Sergeant Richards, greeted him with a curt nod. "We're heading to the comms relay now. Should we proceed with the plan?" "Yes," Turner replied, his voice steady. "We need to shut down their communication systems. No matter what happens, we can't let Gorak's forces coordinate." The group moved swiftly, keeping their weapons at the ready. Turner's mind raced as he thought through every possible scenario. The prison was a maze of tunnels, steel walls, and reinforced doors. They couldn't afford to lose a single step. The closer they got to the comms relay, the more Turner could sense the impending storm. The Xal were coming, and they were bringing everything they had. This wasn't just about control anymore, it was about survival. As they reached the relay station, the doors slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the room was filled with rows of computers and data terminals, blinking with life. It was the heart of the prison's communication system, the central hub that controlled everything from the prison's security measures to the ability to send out distress signals. Turner knew that once they engaged the system, they would be locked in. The Xal would soon know they were inside. "Start the shutdown sequence," Turner ordered. "I'll cover the door." The team quickly moved to the main console, fingers flying across the holographic interface. Turner kept his eyes on the door, watching for any sign of movement. The seconds stretched into minutes, and Turner could feel the tension mounting. Suddenly, an alert flashed on the screen. "Captain." Ortiz's voice came through the comms. "We've got incoming, Xal ground forces. They're only a few minutes away." The air grew thick with urgency as Turner glanced back at the control panel. "How long until the shutdown is complete?" 50 seconds, Ortiz responded. "We're close, but we'll need full access to the core system to ensure the shutdown." "Do it," Turner said, his voice low but filled with certainty. "If they breach this room, we fight. We don't retreat." The Xal were moments away from storming the relay station. Time was running out, and Turner's mind raced. But in that moment, as the pressure mounted, he knew that this was the moment where everything changed. Humanity would either rise, or fall. As the countdown to the shutdown continued, the sound of boots echoing down the corridor grew louder. Turner stood in front of the door, his hand gripping his sidearm. The Xal forces were approaching fast, but he wasn't about to back down. The fate of the prison, and humanity, was at stake. 30 seconds, Ortiz called out. The tension in the air was unbearable. Turner's pulse quickened, but he kept his focus. He could hear the Xal now, their heavy steps reverberating through the metal walls. His mind raced through strategies, trying to calculate the odds of success. They would need to act quickly. "Get ready!" Turner shouted. In the final moments before the Xal stormed the room, Riley Turner had a choice: fight with everything he had, or stand and let the Xal take what they had worked so hard to defend. The door burst open just as the final sequence completed. Xal soldiers, armed with advanced weapons, charged into the room. But Turner was ready. With a shout, he fired his weapon, taking down the first soldier, then ducking behind a column for cover. His team followed suit, firing at the Xal forces and taking down several more. The prison shook as explosions echoed in the distance. The Xal were desperate, but humanity's resolve was stronger. As the last Xal soldier fell, Turner stood up, breathing heavily. "It's done," he said, wiping the sweat from his brow. "We've done it." But there was no time to celebrate. The war wasn't over. But today, humanity had proven that it would not go down without a fight. End of Section 3. Section 4. The Xal had underestimated humanity's resolve. And in the final moments of their battle for control, Riley Turner proved that a single human, armed only with courage, strategy, and determination, could hold the line against a force that had never known defeat. The dust of battle had barely settled when Turner stepped back into the control room, his breath steady, but his heart still pounding. The last of the Xal soldiers had been neutralized, but there was no room for complacency. He knew this was only a temporary victory. The Xal weren't just a military force, they were a symbol of the unyielding power of Deathworlders. And as long as Gorak lived, humanity's position in this war was precarious. "Captain," Ortiz said, her voice a mix of exhaustion and relief. We've regained partial control. The comms are down, and the Xal's backup forces are scattered. For now, we've bought some time. Turner nodded, but his mind was already racing. The prison's central systems had been temporarily disrupted, but they had only won the first round of a much larger, more dangerous game. The Xal might have been thrown off balance, but they would recover. Gorak wasn't the type to simply surrender. We've got to hold this position, Turner said, his voice firm. The Xal are going to come at us with everything they've got. We need to make sure they know they can't break us. Not today. We're ready for the next phase, Harris replied, giving Turner a knowing look. But what about Gorak? We've neutralized his forces, but we still don't have him. He's probably hiding somewhere, waiting for his chance. Gorak had always been a step ahead, but this time, Riley Turner was ready. He knew that to defeat the Xal warlord once and for all, it would take more than brute force. It would take a final act of strategic brilliance. Leave Gorak to me, Turner said, locking eyes with Harris. We need to end this now. We can't afford to give him another chance. Harris nodded, understanding the weight of Turner's words. Gorak was no ordinary prisoner. He was the embodiment of the Xal's hubris, their belief in their own superiority. If humanity was to stand a chance in the galaxy, Gorak needed to be dealt with once and for all. But Turner knew that confronting him head-on wouldn't work. Gorak had been playing a long game, and Turner had to outthink him. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Turner and his team fortified their position, rigging the prison's systems to maximize their advantage. They had stripped the Xal of their ability to coordinate, but that wasn't enough. They had to hit the heart of Gorak's operation, his influence, his power, and destroy it. Turner moved through the corridors with a calm that belied the storm raging within him. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, but he couldn't let fear take over. His every decision, his every move, was a gamble. But in this war, the stakes were too high for hesitation. Humanity had to succeed. In the final moments before the final confrontation, Turner knew the only way to truly defeat Gorak was to strip away his illusions of invincibility. To show him that no matter how powerful he believed himself to be, it was humanity's will that would shape the galaxy's future. Turner and his team reached the Central Command Center once again, but this time it wasn't to shut down the Xal systems. This time, it was to face Gorak, to finally end this war. The doors to the command center slid open, and there he stood, Gorak, massive and imposing, his eyes burning with fury. Well, Gorak's voice echoed through the chamber. I see you've come to finish this. But you're too late, human. This is the moment where you realize that your efforts were futile. You cannot defeat me. Turner stepped forward, his hand resting on the control panel. You're wrong, Gorak, he said, his voice unwavering. We didn't come here to defeat you. We came to show you that we're not afraid of you. Gorak's expression twisted with a mix of disbelief and rage. He took a step forward, his massive frame looming over Turner. You think you can command me? You think you can break me? Turner's hand hovered over the panel, ready to execute the final command. I don't have to command you, Gorak. I just have to make you realize that you're not the one in control anymore. The moment was tense, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. But Turner knew that the time had come to strike. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for humanity's future. Turner hit the button. The control systems that had once been in Gorak's hands shifted. The entire command center's power was redirected to a single point, the prison's core reactor. It wasn't an attack on Gorak's physical strength, but on his ability to hold the prison hostage. The prison's energy source, now cut off from Gorak's influence, would be locked down permanently, ensuring the Xal couldn't restart the system and regain control. The room shook as the system initiated its lockdown sequence. Gorak roared in frustration, his eyes wide with disbelief. You think you can defeat me with this? Turner stepped forward again, this time with a calmness that was almost unsettling. No, Gorak. We think we can defeat you by proving that you're not as invincible as you think. Gorak's fury boiled over, but the warlord knew, deep down, that he had been outmaneuvered. His forces had been scattered. His control over the prison was gone. And now, with the reactor locked down and the system on the brink of collapse, there was nothing more he could do. His dreams of a galaxy dominated by Deathworlders had crumbled in the face of human ingenuity and determination. Gorak, for all his strength, was ultimately undone by something that transcended brute force, humanity's ability to adapt, to outthink, and to never give up. The room fell silent as the Xal warlord stood frozen, his rage subsiding into reluctant acceptance. Turner stood tall, his face stoic as he watched Gorak process the defeat. The warlord's eyes burned with hatred, but there was something else there now, something resembling understanding. Your people will not stop us, Gorak growled, but the venom in his voice had diminished. Turner nodded slowly, his gaze never wavering. We'll see about that. But it's over for you. For now. The war wasn't over. But humanity had won this battle. And for the first time, Gorak understood something that he had never considered, that humans were capable of rising from the brink of defeat, of fighting not with their strength, but with their will. As Gorak was taken into custody, Turner looked around the room at his team. Their faces were weary, their bodies bruised from the battle. But there was a sense of quiet pride in their eyes. They had done it. They had shown the Xal that humanity could stand against them, and not only survive, but prevail. Turner didn't smile. He didn't need to. He had proven his point. Humanity wasn't just another species in the galaxy. It was a force to be reckoned with. In the end, Riley Turner had shown the galaxy that the true power of humanity lay not in their strength, but in their ability to never give up, to outthink their enemies, and to rise against insurmountable odds. The war was far from over, but humanity had won a victory that would echo throughout the galaxy. End of Section 4.